Okay, video number 11. I'm going to talk about the joy of leaving a cult. This could also apply to the joy of getting somebody out of a cult. I've put here some of the basics. Oh, those endless meetings. A typical week in the cult. I got recruited into ICOC, then ICC, then back to ICOC, then left. And the whole process was about 20 years. But the joy of leaving a cult, it's mixed feelings, to be honest. But yeah, no more meetings. I used to, the funniest thing is, right, the cult, like London ICOC or London ICC, it's in London. And for me, I live outside London, and I lived outside London. I have lived in London for a few years at uni, and about 15 odd years ago for a couple of years. But one of the things I'm very happy to leave behind is the driving backwards and forwards to get up to these meetings, and the meetings themselves. When I got recruited in 1995, I just got a degree. I just got a little car, a tiny little Fiat car, and I remember Sundays. Initially, the first service I went to that I mentioned in the first video, they'd rented a room in a school. And there was about 40 of them. And that they basically had a church service in a sort of school hall, because they didn't have an actual building. And their justification for not having an actual building was they grow so fast. And to be honest, yes, they did. The year that I was there, the group went from something like 40 people to something like 70 people. So what's that? That's a good percent of growth, isn't it? People came, people left, but yeah, that was their justification for not having an actual building. Because they said, we don't want to waste money on buildings. We need to give the money to the kingdom to grow the kingdom. But anyway, yeah, jumping back to the joy of leaving a cult, as soon as they realised, oh, I got a car, it's like, oh, well, you can put people in your car and you can go and get visitors and you can bring them to the church. And I remember on a Sunday, I lived in Farnborough, then I moved to Camberley, and it's sort of like I'd spend quite a bit, driving to people's places, picking them up, giving them a lift to the church, and then giving them a lift back home afterwards, and then going home myself. It was a lot of driving and a lot of meetings on a Sunday. Sunday was hard work, And then in this cult, they used to have what they call leaders meetings in London, but anyone could pretty much go to most of these leaders meetings because it was basically just encouraging people to recruit. That's basically what it was about. And they used to have these events called chariot rides, where you'd bring somebody along and they'd do the first principles, and it was all a lot of hard work. Now, it's all right in your 20s. If you're not married and you don't have the responsibility of kids, and you've got a lot of energy in your 20s, yeah, you can do a lot, and I did a lot. I drove a lot. I went to a lot of meetings. It was full on. It was probably harder than a full-time job, to be honest. I mean, work was actually a relief from all the hard work of running around after people and going to all these meetings and evangelising and praying till God knows what hour at night. Fasting as well. They used to do fasting, really bad for you. It was full on. I really don't miss any of that. I don't miss any of that. All these meetings that used to go on and on for hours. And also, what I've put here, no more walking on eggshells or people's egos. The leaders were hypersensitive to anything. You give them a dirty look, woof. It's like really overly sensitive, narcissistic, what they call sociopaths. Crazy people basically, because they were gods of the cult. Effectively, they were accountable to nobody apart from the leader above them. And it was all about recruitment and money. And it's like very happy to leave all that madness behind. Very happy. It's almost like being a manic salesman. Something like that, I guess. Similar to multi-level marketing, actually. And of course, the religious side of it, leaving a cult. I don't believe in their God. I don't believe in their God, their version of God. When you actually think about it, you wouldn't want to spend 5 minutes around their version of God, let alone forever. And one of their catchphrases for people doing all this hard work, oh, your reward is in heaven. Well, it sure as heck wasn't here. I remember there was this couple that I used to give a lift to the church backwards and forwards. They were about, it was about a 15-mile drive to get to them, pick them up, drive them back, and then drop them back, and then come back. So it was about 60 miles, there and back and there and back again. And they always says, oh, your reward's in heaven. And they never really gave anything towards the petrol. And I thought, just like, in hindsight, you can just think, you sneaky little devils. Just freeloading. There's a lot of freeloading that goes on in cults. Mostly it's sort of top down from the leaders, because the leaders expect somebody to meet them at the airport, pick them up. The leaders expect, somebody to pay for their hotel. They're treated like celebrities. I don't miss any of that drama and madness. So the joy of leaving a cult is you can finally rest in peace, kind of thing. But I've talked here about the joining. It seemed the right thing to do at the time was to join, because they were saying, oh, it's all about God. This is what God wants. They're very persuasive. They're very friendly with their twisted scriptures. And it seems like the right thing to do. It seems that, well, this is what God wants you to do. So you do it. And, somebody playing the role of God, that sometimes people think, well, why do cult members have a loyalty to the cult over and above friends and family or work or government or everything? Why do they have such loyalty to a cult? Well, cult members think that it's all about God, and God decides whether you go to heaven or hell. So, that is obviously, from a religious point of view, whether you go to heaven or hell is the most important thing. Paradise forever or hell forever. It's a pretty big one, and they play that card. They hold your salvation, and they're very legalistic, and it's also, it doesn't matter even if you do what they want you to do, they always want more, so it's like, if you brought somebody along to visit on a Sunday, that wasn't good enough. You then had to study the Bible with them, and I've spoken about that, and then you had to mentor them. So you're just making yourself have more and more work, I'm so glad I've left all that madness behind many years ago. But the relationships are a bit more emotional, because if you join a group of whatever, you make friends with people, and sometimes you miss those friends. Often in a cult, a lot of people leave anyway. So sometimes it can be the case that you've got a friend who was also in the cult, and you stay friends with somebody who and then together, you do new things. Some people like watching football. It's like a couple of football fans, they used to be Mormons. Now, they left that cult, but they still enjoy watching football and having a laugh, kind of thing. So you can have friendships that do survive the cult, and it doesn't, I mean, with one or two people that I know from cult days, we hardly ever talk about the cult. We're just getting on with normal life, So some people can remain friends. In my experience, mostly people do sort of, they all fade away, kind of thing. And that is quite traumatic. So you've got the manic activities that they do in a cult non-stop. It's even worse if you're living in a cult household or a cult commune. It's literally relentless. And it's relentless because they say, we're trying to save the world, so you have to be as busy as possible saving the world. But really, they don't want you to think about what's actually going on. They want to keep you so busy and so exhausted, hence fasts and praying all hours of the day and one meeting after the other meeting after the meeting, and then conferences as well. I remember flying to Los Angeles for a week or so. Didn't really see much of Los Angeles. It was all the cult conference. So I think we went to Venice Beach a couple of times, but yeah, it was mostly all cult activity and fellowship. But yeah, I'm happy to have left all that madness behind. The one thing with these cults, going back to the dating, is, a Saturday night, all you got to do is like, somebody will get you into a date, or you can arrange a date or whatever. It was nice the Saturday nights going out, hanging out with people, but what you don't know is that the leaders decide who marries who. So you might fancy somebody, but the leader can just say behind the scenes, no, that's not the person for you, and the trauma that causes as well. So as you can see, a cult is not a church. Definitely not. Definitely not a church. It's too controlling. It's too manipulative. It's just evil. But the Bible actually predicts these type of groups. 3 John verse 9 and 10, Diotrephes. Anyway, who am I now? I'm in this lovely place called I Don't Know. I don't know if there's a God or not. I don't know if there's a heaven or a hell. Because there's no proof. Yeah, and you might say, well, are you an atheist? Are you agnostic? I guess a sort of bit of both, maybe. I think the problem with religion is religion says this is the truth. You better believe it or else you go to hell. So it's manipulation. Whereas the scientific mind says, well, we keep on learning, we keep on discovering, and sometimes we're right, sometimes we're wrong. The nice thing about science is you keep learning, you keep progressing. I mean, science now, is AI a step forwards or a step backwards? We shall see. But, we are evolving as a species. But religion doesn't evolve. All it evolves is manipulation and greed, and war occasionally. So I'm in this happy place called I Don't Know. And a lot of people go to an even better place, I don't care. I don't know and I don't care whether there's a God or not or whatever. For a lot of people, life is just really hard work. But the thing is so much better not being in the cult. So much better not being in the cult. Leaving seemed the right thing to do at the time as well. And I'll talk about that in another video. So yeah, a million times better leaving a cult than being in a cult.